May the force be with you is a phrase used to wish a person well to overcome a challenge. The invitation in this podcast, May the life force be with you, is to explore what it means to truly feel alive, to appreciate the physical, emotional and spiritual connection to our energy, and finally to understand how this impacts who you are and all that you do. May this conversation inspire you to thrive. This episode of May the Life Force Be With You is brought to you by Moment Company and the Moment Pebble. The Moment Pebble is a beautiful, natural stone, light-guided breathing device and is a unique gift for someone who needs that gentle reminder to stop and take a break, to take moments throughout their busy day and to practice mindfulness. Just head over to momentcompany.co, that's momentcompany.co, and enter the code LIFEFORCE at checkout to receive an exclusive 10% podcast discount. Hello, I'm Fiona.
Hi, I'm Kahreela. That was really weird. We normally get a countdown and I just got 5. Then it started.
Today, I'm coming to you from Las Vegas.
How is Vegas, baby?
But tell me where you're coming from, Kahreela.
I'm coming from Tokyo.
Pretty awesome life force shit going on that just surprised the world already, isn't it?
Yeah. It's very, very lucky to be doing so much traveling for both of us. It's super cool.
Yes, I do feel very grateful. And when I was getting up at the crack of dawn this morning, in fact, it's not even dawn yet, to speak to you on Vegas time, my first thought was, I'm really grateful.
Oh, what an amazing first thought.
I thought, whatever it was, because if you don't, then, there's something to be said of kicking off your day with a mindset that is positive. Why not? What's the other choice? Drag yourself out of bed in the morning. So yeah, I consciously said, I'm really grateful I get to talk to Kahreela this morning, do this, or be up so early.
Yeah, I think it can be, when you're doing big and amazing things, it can be really easy to focus on all of the upheaval.
Yes.
And yeah, I feel like I always get it's funny you mentioned gratitude, because I feel like I always get loads of lessons in gratitude in Japan, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember the first time I came to work in Japan, I was on the plane and I'd got caught up in like all of the ego stuff of like, what if the company don't like me? What if none of the workshops sell? What if this is a waste of time and energy? Do you know what I mean? I went into all of the negative what ifs. Yeah. And then I remembered that I should just be grateful that it didn't really matter if that stuff happened or not. Like, I could just enjoy and be grateful for the experience that I was having. And I feel like that's kind of happened to me ever since. Every time I've worked in Japan, there's always this moment of wondering if it's going to be the last time or if it's going to work out this time. In terms,
this isn't a coaching session, but has it never not worked out?
What do you mean? It always has worked out.
Exactly.
But it's like, for example, when I got here, and this happened last year as well, when I got here, none of the one-to-ones had sold.
Right.
And so there was this moment of am I just going to be in Japan for no reason? And is the company, most of the time I work for myself, so I don't have that pressure of being good for another company. Do you see what I mean? And it's that kind of comes up in me. And they have all sold now. But I always have this, that's what I'm saying, is I always have this moment of feeling my ego response to a situation and then having to come into the gratitude And then when I come into the gratitude, it all starts to flow and work out. And I feel like Japan teaches me that every time.
It's interesting because I don't know what Vegas is teaching me.
What's happened in Vegas? Don't leave it in Vegas. Tell it to us, or may the life force be with me.
It's just a sensory overload place. It is a unique place on earth. And, you know, my version of doing Vegas, this is like, I think my 7th time being here. And I've been here for different reasons each time, even including running a half marathon down the strip at night. I've been to a Vegas wedding here where Elvis married the bride and groom. I've never laughed so much in my life. I've done a lot of work trips. And well, not obviously, but I was caught up in the Mandalay Bay mass shootings 7 years ago now. I was in the Mandalay Bay Hotel when it was all happening outside. So it's always kind of like this weird edge and association.
That must have been really scary. I take it you knew that was going on?
So we were in the Cirque du Soleil there. It was a Michael Jackson Cirque du Soleil. And I was with my best friend, Sarah, who is my friend who lives in Australia. But we'd met up. I was living in Canada. She was in Australia. And we're like, let's meet up halfway between. Go to the Grand Canyon, do all these amazing things. And, you know, let's have some fun in Vegas. And the first night we were in Vegas, second night of our trip, we decided to go to Cirque in Mandalay Bay Hotel. We'd been up at drinks at the top of the hotel. We moved down into the theatre, which was in the lobby. And about 45 minutes into the show, all of a sudden, everybody ran off the stage and the safety curtain came down. And Sarah's like, oh, interval. And I was like, no, there is no interval. And then they kind of killed the lights.
Oh my God.
What's going on? And then they made an announcement. We've locked you in for your safety. There's an incident in the hotel. So we're going, oh, someone's burned the toast. Well, you know, like joking. Yeah. And people started to jump on Twitter. And by that point, reports had started to come through. And I remember reading the report and just grabbing Sarah's arm because the report was that there were multiple shooters on the Las Vegas Strip. And then as more of the news came through, it was, and they're in the Mandalay Bay Hotel. And we were like, that's where we are. And just that sense of, oh, I'm living the news. Like I'm here of all the places in the world. And then a little bit of panic.
What was going on with your life force energy? Do you remember?
So you're on pure adrenaline, and at this point you could start to hear like clips had been uploaded on Twitter. You know, so you're almost like real life playing out a movie as well as being in it at the same time. So we could see,
that's so surreal.
We could hear the shotgun, the people watching from their phones in the movie theater, and then someone panicked and started to scream. And then the Tannoy person came over again and said, you're in the line of fire, get down. Someone started screaming. Someone's trying the door. And so we all like dived under our seats and we're lying on the floor under the theater seats. And it was a Japanese family next to us and they were all holding hands, and Sarah and I were like lying on top of each other, just like, you know, clinging on for dear life. And we kind of lay under there for a couple of hours, I think.
Like, what were you thinking about?
Well, Sarah was saying, I'm never bloody trusting you to leave my children again. This is and I was feeling very guilty about that. What was also going through my head was, I am never listening to Michael Jackson ever again, because although they cut the music and cut the lights, there was this background Michael Jackson, and every so often he would go hee hee, and I was like, oh my God, this is so freaking surreal.
How to die in Vegas.
Exactly. And then, of course, the fear with it being in the US kicks in because someone says, I've got a gun, like, let me out, I'll go and get them, kind of thing. And then you're thinking, oh my God, what if we've been locked into the theatre, but there's a shooter in the theatre and we're now locked in? So that created a second wave of panic. But I would say about maybe 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, Homeland Security, FBI, CSI, like all these people with acronyms on their bomber jackets came and opened the doors, and under sort of a guide of them, we got guided out into a bus that took us past the shooting scene and then to the convention center that they'd set up, like Hurricane Katrina, you know, all the beds, and we got given, you know, blankets. And Sarah and I just looked at each other and we're like, we don't want to be here. So lots of kind Uber drivers and taxi drivers were just ferrying for free everybody from the convention center back to the strip. And we got back into our hotel about 7:30. But by being in the convention center, we met quite a few people who had lost friends, had been in the hospital, showed us their scrapes and wounds, and it was pretty traumatic. And then when we got into our hotel room, it's on the news, it's everywhere. It's the next day, but we haven't slept. The BBC, Sky News are trying to get hold of us because they'd seen through my social that I said we're in the Mandalay Bay, but we're okay. And then my mum gets on the local radio and the media want to talk to us, and we're like, we don't want to talk to anyone. We just want to rest. It's been so traumatic. Like, we're exhausted and you're numb because you knew at that point 85 people weren't coming back to their hotel rooms.
Oh my God.
And that just felt really shocking. And then, you know, you're in Las Vegas, everything's party. Yet all the hoardings, the advertising screens all became about where to donate blood, which we couldn't because we were tourists, you know, how to find your friends. And it's such a different energy, obviously, to all the times we've been here. And you didn't know what to do to be respectful because everything was closed, but we needed to eat, we needed to walk around, the comfort. There was a collective comfort, though, of us all, thousands of people you didn't know, all having been through something together.
The beauty in that story to me is the cab drivers, just the kindness that comes out of crisis.
And just everyone that you met the next day. We were all like, we were not at the concert, but we were in the hotel where it was all happening. We could have been anywhere. We could have been anywhere in the world, but we were in the hotel. And you know, we couldn't go to the Grand Canyon the next day. We couldn't do anything that we'd actually planned to do being in Vegas because everything was closed. So you're just kind of wandering around this like fake party world, but like a zombie. And then when we left the following day back to LA, we were kind of like, we want to share our story with people because we're still in the trauma bubble. It's still too recent. We needed that collective comfort of being in the environment where such a tragedy had happened. We weren't ready to kind of fully let it go, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's one of my experiences of Las Vegas.
I mean, what an experience. I feel like my nervous system just went on the whole journey with you. It feels like it's something that is really significant in it feels like a very heightened experience.
The fear is kind of indescribable in those moments because it's surreal but very real at the same time. As I say, we're watching the news play out around us on people's phones, but we're deeply inside, and that feeling of being trapped in that environment. You know, they locked us in, they cut the lights, which I believe is like a hostage calming tactic. You know, so you kind of are more
in your yin
instruction.
More in your deep feminine.
Maybe. I'm not sure anyone was thinking about that at the time, but But as I say, what I take away is that collective. The next day, just wanting to be in that protective bubble of people that understand what that moment felt like, and not wanting to come away from that feeling. And I would say it took me about a year to be able to feel comfortable going into a cinema or a theatre, because, you know, I'd be like, what's the door? What's behind me? Did someone just come through the door? Is that the same person that walked out? Like, you have this fear of what's behind you. Or I did. So yeah, so that was definitely a Vegas moment that was
That's
unique.
not a Vegas moment. Most people
and deeply confronting and challenging, and yeah, it probably, as you say, in some way changes you that you might not be aware of in each moment, but it certainly was a life-changing moment.
I think there's kind of two things coming to me, which are, one is it just brings it home that there are people in other countries in the world that are going through this, versions of this now, because you know, when you're living in a war zone, you still have to go out to, like, you still get on with your life. You still go out to the cinema and do you know what I mean? Like,
well, I thought about it with the shootings a few weeks ago in Moscow. 134 people went to the theater and didn't come home, and you know, those sort of joyous, art-filled, creative, imaginative environments where you're going out to, you know, you're seeking pleasure, you're seeking fun, you're seeking to escape from reality, and then they become the environments that become unsafe. It's very hard to imagine yourself in those situations on a daily basis, and what your immune system and the, you know, I can feel it just talking about it. I can feel it again. And we actually stayed in this hotel as well. I always stay in the same hotel, so
I can feel it from you. So like, that's, I feel like it is embedded, you know. And then you think of the people and the children that live this as a daily thing, you know,
lifestyle.
Like,
you know, if that's the right word. It is life.
Live through that level of unsafety and loss and fear. And yet the other thing that is also coming to me through this is that humans are so good at turning to community in crisis. And I remember my grandparents and everybody from the war generation often talking about the level of community and camaraderie and kindness, and that they almost grieved and missed that, you know, even in their like years and years and years later. I remember another friend of mine's grandmother saying to her that she preferred the war to lockdown because, you know, in the war there was so much community, and in lockdown there was such a lacking of community. And she said the lacking of community was worse than being in a war in community.
Well, that's where I was going to go. My thought process was, you know, the COVID era is one that people comment that did return. And it's interesting because someone like maybe in their 70s might have felt that community. I think different people would have felt it of different age groups and life stages. And I think that as awful as COVID was, and I lost someone to COVID, it wasn't a war zone in the same way that maybe there was a different type of maybe it was nationalism, you know, or maybe it's national we have an enemy, and it is this thing over here I can define, and therefore there's something that you can get behind as a collective and point that energy at something. And there's, whereas with COVID, it was everywhere. There wasn't something that everybody could get behind because everybody in their own countries was managing it in a different way. I don't know. I feel that there's still community. And actually in my work that I've been doing here, this was a part of a conversation we had yesterday, in that only 24% of people in America feel that their companies give a shit about them. It's not quite how the survey was phrased, but that's how, 24% that think that the companies strongly agree that their companies got them. They care about them. It was 49%, I think, during COVID. And so there was a perceived, doesn't mean to say they actually had to be doing anything different, but there was a perceived shift that people thought their companies cared about them and they cared about their well-being. Because I guess the energy was focused on one single thing. How are you getting on at home? Is everything all right? Change your working environment to suit your needs. We'll protect you from that. Your job is safe. The government's still going to pay you. Like, there was all these safety measures put in place. Now, what's happened afterwards, I believe, is nothing's changed, but people's perception of how they're supported has gone back to what it was before, because either nothing's changed or their expectations are higher. But there was something around that collective in the COVID period that more people felt cared for.
I think crisis creates collective. I think crisis always makes us more community orientated naturally. I slightly disagree about, I disagree. I feel like a lot of people didn't.
Never disagree. This is good.
I feel like a lot of people didn't feel community in the pandemic. I feel like, like that woman that was saying that she preferred the war, she was one of those people that was in an old people's home and wasn't allowed to see her family. And, I think some people suffered from a massive loss of community and what community was to them because of regulations and things like that. And so I feel like community was something that was maybe possible to feel in certain situations in that, but there was also massive amount of lack of what naturally causes community being possible. Does that make sense?
I do.
And I think that people really suffered, like mental health wise and stuff like that. I think we also saw in the pandemic an incredible amount of the suffering that happens when there is less community in people's lives.
Yeah, and I think we will still see the ramifications of that for a number of years, because life changed and shifted so drastically in such a short space of time.
Absolutely. And in every other crisis, what we turn to is community. And in that crisis, turning to community wasn't possible for a lot, like turning to community in the ways that we turn.
It's interesting you say that, because to me, people did turn to community. It's just the means to do it was not face to face, but our access through technology to anybody everywhere at any moment through media, through technology, through the types of platforms that we're using right now to talk to each other from other sides of the world, where we could do that all day long. So I kept in contact and reconnected with people that I wouldn't have in a normal environment, because the power of technology and time, because time shifted during that period as well, meant that I was able to speak more. We set up more groups with our family. We did whole family calls, which we'd never done before. we set up WhatsApp groups with family members that we've never done before, and made regular check-ins that still continue to this day. We created something that has maintained. I have a different version because I moved back up to Scotland to look after my dad during lockdown, and the community in my mum and dad's street, because everybody had lived there for a long time, was way more than it ever was before, because we consciously made an effort to connect outside in the gardens and speak over the fences. And it again continued way after everybody was allowed out the house again. So I think there's different versions of community.
Absolutely. And I think, and you know, I had similar experiences for sure. You know, we held prayer and had this amazing global community of like 6 weeks of non-stop prayer with people praying all over the world and connecting on Zoom and everything like that. But I stand by the fact that I think community will always find a way. And yet I distinctly remember trying to convince myself that being on Zoom was the same. And it isn't. And then I remember when the world reopened up and like you could actually be in proper community in person, and it is not the same.
No.
And you know,
I agree it's not the same, but I also challenge that through technology and a change of behavior, we've never been more connected across the world.
Which is amazing. And, you know, talking of gratitude, I'm so grateful that we are doing this podcast from Tokyo and Vegas, and, you know, like how whether we would have even been able to cope with the lockdown without the technology, I don't know. But I also think that there was, I think for me personally, I feel like in crisis, we need to be able to hug each other. We need to be able to gather around food and share. We need to be able to be free to have our needs met, that are emotional needs. And there were many, many people, for, you know, like people that maybe don't have family, or people who, you know, older generations that don't have the technology and stuff like that, the people that needed development. Like to me, it's like community is it is the most important thing, actually. Like for me, it's the most important thing there is.
I do agree with you, Kahreela, in that, and I also feel for the young people that lost out on those life milestone moments, and that, you know, what it means to, you know, leave home, go to college or uni and meet people face to face. There are bonds that are connected for a lifetime. Go to your first workplace and meet other people in the office, and, you know, all of that has been stripped away. But I also, and I do agree about the older generation through technology as well. But the one thing that's guaranteed to make me cry is loneliness, and is thinking about people of older generations that don't have access to technology, but also we have stripped away our community-based environments as a society, either because that's accelerated because of COVID, or we were already, I feel, on that path already. So I think we both have I'm going to challenge a somewhat utopian version of what life and collective and community is like. And I think it's challenged anyway. And I think COVID has doubly challenged it. But I also think that there are ways we can use technology to help overcome it. That's my little...
Absolutely. And technology, like everything else, should be a vehicle for community to happen. And you know, to me, community should be the thing that we protect and preserve above all else, because it is the thing that we turn to.
Well, how do you feel that? What does that feel like in Japan? Because I feel like Japan does have an amazing sense of self, of culture, of a society that seems to work and flow, and things go on time, and there's a beauty to it, but there's also a order and some rules and boundaries that are set because of that. What's your take on what community feels like in Japan?
So I think it's hard to be Japanese in Japan. I think that there is a huge amount of pressure to not bring shame to your family and to your community in this culture. And so things are not necessarily done out of love. They are done out of
obligation.
Out of being under the thumb of that pressure. At the same time, it does, at least on the surface, feel like a much more, the streets are clean. Like, there is this awareness of others that is very integrated into the society. Maybe too much, or maybe from the wrong place. I'm obviously not Japanese, and so this is only from my Western
your outside perspective
on it. But I feel like I don't know if there's anywhere in the world that is putting community first. Maybe there is, but Japan doesn't put community first. Japan puts the nation of Japan first, which is a different thing. And I think that if we, I would like to slightly come back to the coronavirus thing, because, one of my experiences of corona was that I realized that because I do so much traveling with my work, that I didn't actually have that many friends local to me. And so when this happened, I experienced a lot of loneliness because even though I was speaking to people on the phone and stuff, I didn't have very many people local to me. And me and a friend were walking down the promenade in one of the times where it was like a break, like where you could, and we were both like complaining essentially that we didn't have any community in Brighton, and there wasn't enough community in Brighton. And then we both had this realization that if you want community, you have to be part of making that happen.
Yeah.
We both had this realization that we had to, that like, community doesn't come from government, it doesn't come from other people. Like, community is something that you have to actively participate in and create, essentially. Anybody can do it. It's not and actually what the war generation, you spoke about, like what the stuff that's being lost, most of that stuff was created by the war generation, who had lived through such traumatic experiences and learned that community was so important. And as that generation have died, we haven't inherited from them, like we haven't taken the baton from them.
But I also think that it's because our communities have got more dispersed. Like I'm so lucky that I can land in Australia and I've got a community there. I can come to the States, I've got a community here in Canada. And, the power and nature of how we travel and move now means that our communities might be more spread out. They're not necessarily what we consider home. And I think then that changes the way that you live, perhaps, and how easy it is to tap into things in your local community or create. But as you say, you just have to get active, be part of it, speak it out, because it is there and it's there in abundance, but you have to look for it.
And what are you gonna, I don't think it's a case of saying like, where's my community? I think it's a case of saying, what am I gonna do for my community?
Yeah.
Because
what do I want to be part of?
Yeah.
What kind of people also get lit up by that? What I like to do, like I kind of start there, and then birds of a feather, you kind of flock towards people that have a similar outlook and a similar passions and way they want to live. And then that's where the clicks start to happen.
Yeah. I mean, what happened after that conversation that I had with that friend was we were like, okay, we need to be the ones to like make community happen then. And it was at the time in the UK where you could only meet up in 6 in groups of 6. And so we did an event on the beach where everybody was in circles of 6. And there were quite a few circles of 6. And we put the question to these circles of 6 that was like, what do you want from a community event? Like, you're in Brighton, what do you want from a community event? And every single group of 6 not being able to hear each other because they were distant.
Yeah.
Every single group of 6 came up with the same answer. And they all said the same thing. They all basically said, we don't want to learn anything. We don't want to have to do anything or achieve anything. We just want to hang out. So they wanted an event that wasn't about
scripted or about a particular thing.
Or about like you have to be in this thing or about dating. Like they just wanted to hang out, and it made me realize that is the thing that is missing. Like, as you know, in Brighton we're so rich with things to do.
Yeah.
But with the death of the church was also the church hall. The death of the church hall. And it's like all of the things like village fetes and like sitting around the fire together, or just the hanging out stuff is why I think we're community deficient.
My mum meets up with a group of friends. They call it the Housewives Register. It is clearly from another time, right? But she's been in it since the 1970s. And every 2 weeks they meet up and they discuss topics, or they might have somebody's doing a little presentation on something that they've been researching, and about 20 of them, and they take it in turns. There's a book club, but basically they get together and have coffee and hang out together. And she loves her Keep Fit as well. That's changed her life, finding that age 78 and going along and just kind of, doing a little workout together. And I think there's something to be said for, but she's also ran it in occasions and kept it going. And what they are worried about is that it's going to die off because they're all getting older and they're losing members every year, not getting new ones. So I'm like, create a Facebook. And Mum's like, no, they don't want to create a Facebook. They're all too old. And I'm like, but that's how you will get people to understand, find you now. But it just makes, I just know how important that is for those women, that they've got each other to connect to every 2 weeks. And it becomes an important occasion in the diary and something to look forward to and be part of. And I think that's really lovely.
It is. To bring it back round to life force energy, I really think that whenever you are in tribe, whenever you are in community, it has an amazing effect on your life force energy. I feel like it regulates it. And I think that's why when you left Vegas, you felt so so not ready after that incident, because what you needed was your life. After an event like that, you needed your life force energy to be regulated.
Yeah.
And I think only community can regulate your life force energy.
Exactly. I mean, I didn't talk this language then. I had not started yet my spiritual awakening. Maybe it was part of it subconsciously. Who knows? It was the last time I ate meat was that day. Sometimes I just, yeah. And the last time I drank a glass of wine as well was that day. I was like, you know what? I don't want this anymore. Something's rejecting it in my body. So maybe it was the start of something, but 100% you've hit the nail on the head of how I feel about that. And you know, I think I didn't expect the brain to go there this morning. It is very early.
It's like 6 in the morning.
I'm going to go and think about that. But one thing, the irony out of this conversation is that I don't know when I'm going to see you again in real life.
June. I'm going to be in the UK in June, and I'm going to give you the biggest hug.
You know that I'm not around in June, but I'm going to be in Cork City, and I'm going to be Salt Lake City, and I might be in France. But
July.
I'm sure there'll be a crossover. I'm positive.
There will be.
But I've got to go and hit the tables. No, I won't. But there will be people playing the tables at 6 a.m. I didn't even talk about my sphere experience. I'll talk about that another time.
Next time. I haven't heard much about Vegas this time.
No. But it's nice to see you virtually. It's nice to see your face, even though it's other side of the world. And have a wonderful time over the next few days in Japan, and I'm sure we'll hear all about it soon.
And I can't wait to give you a hug in person, but thank you for all of these life force consciousness hugs that I'm getting from lonely hotel rooms.
Me too. Until the next time, my friends.
So much gratitude for you. May the life force be with you. We hope this conversation has topped up your life force energy. If it has, then please help us spread the life force. Like, share, subscribe, all of that. And may the life force be with all of us.